Hey guys, it's Nufoto-san here. Sorry about the kind of lull in episodes. I haven't actually kept track of how many weekends I've missed off the schedule I set for myself. I just figured I wouldn't be able to record properly over the holiday break, so I didn't. And now I'm trying to get back into things here. I hope you guys all had a really wonderful holiday break yourself, whatever you might celebrate. My family did Christmas with a little bit of Yule. We didn't do a proper Yule celebration, but my sister lit a Yule log, which was a story I'll probably get into here in a minute. And we got some Yule presents exchanged in addition to Christmas presents, but it wasn't anything too extravagant or anything. Our Christmas was pretty small. I live in the same town as my sisters, and then my dad came and visited us. We went to one of my sister's places. My sisters don't have multiple places, but the place one of my sisters lives in. We went to her place. She cooked up like a little Christmas meal. It was her first time hosting a holiday, so it was kind of stressful for her. But she did well. I had a good time. It was a good meal. And then afterwards, she wanted to light the Yule log, like I mentioned before. She didn't get to do it on Yule, but since Dad was there, she thought, he could help her. She'd never used her fireplace before, but the fireplace was one that was different than in the house we grew up in, so he wasn't familiar with it either. And I'm not like a fireplace expert. I've never ever lit a fire. My place has pellet stoves where you just dump pellets in, and really you just have to make sure it's clean like once a year. But he didn't know how the little latch that lets the smoke up into the chimney worked. And so I guess what happened is he thought he had pulled it out, but he hadn't. But anyway, what happened was immediately the entire house was filled with smoke. Like, it was almost as soon as I realized that there was a smoke problem, there was just way too much smoke. And the smoke alarm started going off. My sister has cats and birds, so that was kind of scary. And there's also a dog, but the dog I think was okay. It was because it's a big dog, but the smaller animals with smaller lungs were a concern. So we locked the cats into the back house while the alarm's going off. Luckily, their safe place that they go to when they're scared is the back of the house. So we just kind of closed the door on them in there and hoped for the best. And the birds were already behind a closed door, and we were afraid to open it because we just didn't know it was, if the smoke was getting into that room, they were probably already dead. And if we opened the door to check on them, we would be killing them. So we had to wait. The alarm's going off. We get a call through her home alarm system from, I think it was from the fire department first, and she was telling them it's a false alarm. There's no fire, just a lot of smoke. We're trying to air the house out. By that point, all the animals were put away, so we had the doors open and the windows open, just trying to let all the smoke out. And so we kept doing that, and then a little bit later, the alarm company, the alarm systems company called. It was a separate call from a different person, and we had to tell them the same thing. Eventually, the smoke all cleared out, and we were able to check, and all the animals were fine. I probably wouldn't be telling this story the way I am if anything had died, but the birds were fine. There was zero smoke in their room. Once enough smoke was cleared, we could check on them, but it was kind of scary when we couldn't. But that was a stressful 20 minutes, I think it felt about that. I don't know, it felt longer, but I think if I'm trying to be conservative, I think it's probably about a 20-minute emergency where eventually we did get the little thing in the fireplace open, so the smoke started going up into the chimney and not into the whole living room. And then once that was done, we decided we needed to calm down. So we all got ice cream, and we sat down and we watched half of It's a Wonderful Life. It was kind of late by that point, so we didn't really have time to watch the whole thing. But that's my sister's favorite Christmas movie, and she was the one panicking the most because she has anxiety anyway, and it was her house and her pets that were in danger. and she was also worried that like her neighbors were hearing the alarm going off because we had, the front and back door were open, so there was very likely that they could hear the alarm going off, and she was embarrassed about that too. So we put the movie on for her more than anything, and then about halfway through it, we all left to go home. But that was a fun adventure. I imagine, I assume most of you probably don't give a shit about my day-to-day life, but those of you who do, for presents, I mostly got video games. I did have one funny exchange where my other sister, not the one whose house we filled with smoke, but my other sister, kind of, sort of bought each other the same presents for each other. Like, I had bought her a plushie of the slime from that time I got reincarnated as a slime, because we've been watching that together, and she loves it, and she loves plushies. So I got her this really cute plush, only to find out she'd already bought it for herself. So that came in, and she was like, "Well, that's great." I ended up giving the one I had bought to my other sister, so she just got like an extra present. But that was a little bit funny, and we were kind of joking about that. But then additionally, I did buy her another present. It actually hasn't come in yet. She knows it's coming, but it's going to come in like the next week. It's like from Japan, I think. It might be from China, but it's some other plushie. And that's coming in eventually. But I bought another present that was meant for all three of us, both of my sisters and myself, and that was Mario Party for the Switch, so the newest one, that complete with 2 Joy-Con controllers, so we could have up to 4 people playing together, which I thought would be cool. And it was kind of expensive. I think it was like $130 for the game plus the Joy-Cons. So I was like, that's too expensive to buy just on a whim, but like Christmas is coming up, so what I'll do is I'll wrap it and I'll put it as a present to all of us. Because when we were kids, our parents would buy like one really nice present that was for all 3 of us. Like that's how we got every gaming console we owned growing up came that way. Our PlayStation and our PlayStation 2. I think that's it. But then like other things, like there was one time they got us like an air hockey table that we sadly didn't play nearly as much as we should have for how much they must have spent on that. I feel bad about that. There was always like one really nice present every year that was for all 3 of us. So I thought, you know what, we haven't done that in a long time, so this will be, it's not as nice as those things, but it's nice, and it's something all 3 of us will enjoy playing together. So I got that, and then they opened it up, and my 2 sisters kind of shared a look that I didn't understand until later, but the sister who I had bought the slime for had also bought for me the new Mario Party, and hers was cheaper. She didn't spend as much as I did, thankfully. I would have been devastated if she spent that much on me, but she's got just the game by itself, which is still not cheap, but it's a bit more reasonable for a Christmas present. It was probably about as much as I spent on the slime, but it was funny because now we have 2 copies of Mario Party, and we're going to return the one that doesn't have the controllers and get some other game that we can play together. But it was just a funny coincidence. It's never happened before, but I got a kick out of it. A lot of the other games I got, I mostly got games. Like my dad gave me like a gift card, and my other sister gave me for Yule, she gave me like a bunch of little cheap PS2 games, like bargain bin PS2 games, and then a few more nicer games on Christmas, Fatal Frame 2 and 3, and then another spooky game that I haven't heard of, because she knows I really like the first Fatal Frame, but I've never actually played any of the others. And then like all the cheap PS2 games were mostly just because she joins me on my Let's Play channel sometimes, and so she thought some of them might be things we could play. And there were things like a Simpsons licensed game, or like the Polar Express game, which I thought was kind of funny. I didn't even know it existed. That's not surprising, but I thought it was funny. And like Legends of Wrestling, and some other like cheap PS2 games. And that was mostly my holidays. Or at least my Christmas. New Year's wasn't anything too special. We used to do New Year's stuff like eggnog and like counting down the timer, we used to always watch Sci-Fi Channel's Twilight Zone marathon, but none of us have cable anymore. We all just watch stuff online. But my dad had never seen The Happening. That came up in conversation, and my sister thought that was like a travesty. So we put on The Happening, and then we watched some random YouTube stuff until about midnight, and then we all went to bed, I guess. I was off working on art that whole time, like I usually am. Usually I have something playing on the TV, and I'm just on my computer inking and coloring whatever. I don't remember exactly what I was working on during that. I think it was a pick based on the new She-Ra that you guys, Patreon sponsors will have seen it, but the rest of you will see it in about a couple weeks probably. It'll go public on the site. And that was my holidays. Pretty nice overall. Like there was that there was some unpleasantness, but it was all like the kind of unpleasantness that doesn't have any real bad negative consequences, like the my sister and I buying each other gifts we'd already bought, or the whole smoke alarm thing. Like they were they're better, they're good stories, so like I don't feel too bad about them. Like nothing was damaged or hurt, nothing died in the smoke thing, and the gift present thing is just like a funny an anecdote. It's not anything major. So yeah, that's just like a little update in my life. These aren't usually so like blog like, but I just thought there was some good stories I wanted to share with you all, and I honestly didn't have like a good idea for what this episode would really be about. I've been cycling through some different things I thought I could talk about, but none of them felt like fully fleshed out ideas. Like I don't know, I thought maybe talking about like the way we, or at least the way I view porn, because I've noticed that there's a lot of people online who, when they look at art, or any kind of porn, if there's like one thing they don't like about it like they hang up on it, which is like the opposite of how I look, where it's very easy for me to ignore elements of a picture I dislike and take in the parts I do like, and because I think it's useful to enjoy as many things as possible. You're just happier when you enjoy more things, I think. But I thought I could talk about that, but like I basically just summarized everything I had to say about it there. Like I could elaborate on things, but that didn't even take me a whole minute to explain. Maybe I'll still go back to it if I can think of more stuff to say on it. I don't know. I may not be doing too many more of these. We'll see. I like doing them. Maybe I'll do like a little Q&A. Like I do my Patreon Q&As. I'm working on one of those right now, actually. But I don't think I'd want to do something as big as that, where I like answer every single question for sure. But maybe I could take in like a handful of questions and just answer like 4 or 5 tops, and probably not do as much of the editing with it as I do for the Patreon stuff. But yeah, that might be something we do for a future episode. Or yeah, so if you do have questions, leave them, and when I decide to do that, I'll just gather them up for that. Just pick whatever ones I like the best, or whatever I have the best answers for. That reminds me, another thing I thought about talking about was my character asks selection process, like what goes through my head when choosing which character asks to answer. Maybe I could do that again, but I feel like that wouldn't be as useful for like non-patrons, because the character asks are a Patreon reward. But I don't know. Anyway, I think that probably will do it for this episode. I know I didn't talk about anything all that interesting, but hopefully you had fun catching up with me, and I'll have something more substantial next time, hopefully. For now, let's go ahead and move on to my favorite part of the show, and the main reason I want to keep doing it is just an excuse to keep doing these, and that is the Mix and Match Challenge. So, the Mix and Match Challenge, for anyone who's new, is a little game where I take 2 randomly selected characters. I haven't selected them yet. I will do that live here in a moment. And then I pitch a comic featuring those characters. And since they're crossovers, or at least they should be a crossover unless something goes wrong with the selection, then it's going to be set in my Exoverse crossover universe. If you follow my work, you're probably at least loosely familiar with that. And I just pitched how I would do a comic featuring that pairing. So let's go ahead and see what characters we've got. Our first person is number 33 on my list. Okay, so that's actually Android 17 who we've done. You know what? Yeah, we can have repeats. Why not? So Android 17, who's been in one of these already, but he's going to be in another one now. And our second person he'll be paired with is number 105, Peter Pan. Okay, Disney's Peter Pan. This is interesting. I think this is the first... Is this the first yaoi pairing I've gotten? Most of the people on the list, it's like 3/4 female, so there's been a lot of straight and yuri pairings, but I think this is our first yaoi. And it's an interesting one. Two very cute guys. This would be a fun one to do. So let's think for a second. How do we want to do this? I think a world in which both Peter Pan and Dragon Ball characters exist is very interesting. In the Exoverse, obviously there's lots of characters who can fly, but that's like Peter Pan's things that he can fly and most people can't. But like in the Exoverse, there's like all the Dragon Ball characters. There's probably like Superman and like all these other characters that can fly. So his thing's probably not that special, but thankfully he does live in like this alternate world, this like imaginary world, or this world of imagination, Neverland. So I wonder what the best way to have that happen is, because normally Peter Pan only leaves Neverland to see children, right? And Android 17 is not a child, but maybe... Okay, so I'm going to include Marin in this, which is Krillin and 18's daughter. But she's not going to be involved in the action. She's just going to be part of the plot. So it's because she wasn't one of the ones we selected. I don't even think she's on my list. But, you know, Marin, specifically like the younger Marin that we see in like Dragon Ball Super. So let's say 18 and Krillin are doing maybe they're going on like a vacation or something. And they leave Marin in charge, or not in charge, but they leave her with 17 in charge on like his island. Alternatively, you could use, he does have his own kids, so you could also use them, but the problem with that is that I don't think they've ever been shown. So if we're theoretically making a comic here, I couldn't use them because they don't have designs, and I don't want to make new designs for characters that do exist, because they might show up later. And I haven't seen the latest movie yet, but I don't think they're in that. So, but they might show up in something eventually. So, to play it safe, we'll have it be Marin. 17's wife and kids are doing something else, but Marin is staying with him on the little island he protects as a ranger or whatever. We'll just say that. So it's some good uncle-niece bonding time. But then one night, Peter Pan's like, "Hey, little girl, come see my magical place," and he like takes Marin off, and 17 sees this and follows them, and because he can fly, he doesn't need fairy dust, so he just flies after them and ends up in Neverland. And like, you could do so much stuff with the premise of just plugging a Dragon Ball character into Neverland, but basically what I want to happen is 17 like finds Peter Pan and the Lost Boys and Marin, and they're doing all the Peter Pan stuff, and he shows up. Maybe even by the time he gets there, they're already like in trouble with like the pirates or with Hook, assuming this is like when Hook's alive, something like that. And maybe 17 even like chases the pirates off. It'd be very easy for him to chase the pirates off. Something to where like Peter Pan and 17 maybe end up fighting together a little bit, so that there's not... I don't want there to be too much, like, Peter Pan versus Android 17, because that just seems, well, for one, kind of one-sided, but also just not very interesting. So, rather than have them fight each other, they'll fight together against the pirates, and, like, Peter Pan is doing his stuff, and 17's like, okay, this kid is obviously not, like, a threat, and he's like, you know, I'm here, so Marin's still safe. That's all I care about. And so he's like, okay, well, we can stay here, but not too long because I have to get back to protect my animals on my island. And but maybe they'll stay the night because, like, when he tries to take Marin away, maybe Marin's like, no, please, Uncle 17, I really want to stay, or whatever. And she's like, gives him like cute puppy dog eyes. So he's like, okay, we'll stay one night. And then that night is when we would probably set the actual like sex, because it's one of my comics, so there's going to be sex. And I think we only want it to be 17 and Peter Pan. So like Marin and the Lost Boys are asleep. Tinkerbell is asleep. And this is where I get a little bit tricky because I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. I feel like having like the characters, like they party or something and everyone parties out, but there's no like alcohol in Peter Pan, right? Like they're not going to be like drunk or anything. So I think probably it would just end up having to be something where one of the characters is a bit more promiscuous than we're used to them being in canons, and that's fine. It's an alternate universe or whatever. So I think it would be better to have Peter Pan come on to 17 just because he's the younger one. Not literally, I think he's been around for like hundreds of years or whatever, but like physically it just feels a little bit less problematic if he's the one initiating. So maybe Peter Pan does come on to 17 and 17 reciprocates. It wouldn't be that hard to do. Like Peter Pan's all about having fun and like youthful energy and exuberance, and I think that translates pretty easily into wanting to bone someone. So since they're both like kind of pretty guys, I would be fine having them switch roles back and forth between like top and bottom. Normally I prefer to have like the cuter character on bottom when it comes to yaoi, but in this case I think you could flip it back and forth. They're both pretty cute. And yeah, I don't think there'd be too complicated about that after that, but it would take a while to get there. That's the problem with this pairing, is it would take a while to really get there story-wise, I think. And then, you know, they do their thing, and then there's a couple pages at the end of the comic where they wake up and it's the next day, and then 17 like flies Marin home, but Peter Pan's like, hey, come back any time or whatever, and it's like an amicable farewell. And then 17 gets back, and maybe you could have him come back and find something funny or whatever. I think you probably could do something entertaining with the pirates, in that 17's used to dealing with a form of pirate in the like animal smugglers or whatever. I think you could call them pirates. Maybe even Hook's pirates somehow find his island and he chases them off of his island back to Neverland at the end. Something like that could be funny. Like you'd only need like 1 or 2 panels to kind of convey that concept. But yeah, that's my idea for a Peter Pan and Android 17 comic. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you had fun. I always love doing those pairings. I don't know what it is. It just it's fun to kind of exercise that creative muscle that way. So yeah, come back in a couple weeks. I'll have a new episode. I don't know what it'll be yet. If I get enough questions, it might be a Q&A. Otherwise, I might just wait a bit and do it later. I would prefer the questions be left on the YouTube video. So if you're watching this on my site, like in the embedded on my site, maybe go to YouTube and leave it in the YouTube comments. I just feel like it'd be better to keep it separated from the comments on whatever picture this ends up being paired with. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Bye.